If this story has captivated you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. Let's continue. Marina arrived at the imposing residence in the Kensington neighbourhood in London on a cloudy autumn afternoon, when dry leaves danced by the wrought iron gate and the sky seemed to carry the weight of ancient secrets. She carried only a discreet backpack and the serenity of someone who had weathered storms others couldn't even imagine. At 32, her simple appearance, brown hair tied in a ponytail and neutral clothes, allowed her to go unnoticed, exactly as she had planned. She was introduced as the new caregiver for Isabella, the 7-year-old daughter of the Albright family, hired in a hurry after a series of nannies failed to connect with the child since Lucy, her mother, had passed away 8 months prior. The housekeeper, Mrs. Martha, a grey-haired woman with a suspicious gaze, received Marina with cold politeness, evaluating every detail of the newcomer as one would examine a flawed item. The other staff, including the butler Mr. Oswald and the cook Joanna, exchanged knowing glances that clearly conveyed their thoughts. Just another ordinary woman, without special qualifications, destined only to keep hours, prepare snacks, and put the girl to bed. But there was something about Marina that none of them could precisely define. Her overly straight posture, the way her green eyes meticulously scanned each room, the silent firmness of her gestures, all suggested a much more complex history than her employment record indicated. Roderick Albright, the owner of the house, was a 43-year-old businessman, proprietor of one of the largest construction companies in the county. Since losing Lucy in a tragic episode he still couldn't fully process, he had transformed his profound grief into an armor of ice. He isolated himself in his office until late hours, attended endless meetings, constantly traveled to construction sites in other capitals, and delegated all care for Isabella to a succession of professionals who came and went from the mansion like extras in an unscripted play. When he finally descended the marble staircase to meet the new hire, his expression was stone cold, his brown eyes dull, his jaw tense. He shook Marina's hand with calculated force, gauging her reaction, searching for any sign of weakness or insecurity. "Do your job, that's all. No unnecessary questions, no opinions on how to raise my daughter, no trying to give me unasked for advice. Is that clear?" Marina met his gaze without flinching, and something in that silent exchange made Roderick subtly furrow his brows. She wasn't intimidated, didn't look away, didn't make any of the submissive gestures he expected. She simply nodded calmly, like someone who had faced far more menacing authorities and survived to tell the tale. "Perfectly clear, Mr. Albright. You can trust that Isabella will be in good hands." There was something in her voice, a serene, almost protective firmness that caused an indefinable discomfort in Roderick. He turned and ascended the stairs, again leaving Marina alone in the entrance hall, observed by the staff who soon dispersed, murmuring among themselves. Isabella was in her room, a spacious area decorated in shades of pink and lilac, filled with dolls that seemed untouched and children's books arranged with excessive perfection. The girl sat on the floor, drawing with colored pencils in a large notebook, her blonde hair falling over her small, pale face. When Marina softly entered, tapping lightly on the ajar door, Isabella looked up and froze completely, like a startled bird before a stranger. But then, something extraordinary happened. Instead of the fear or rejection she had shown with all the other caregivers, the girl tilted her head to the side, studying Marina with genuine curiosity, as if recognizing someone she had long awaited, someone who finally understood her loneliness. Marina slowly crouched down, meeting the child's height, and smiled discreetly, neither exaggerated nor forced. "Hi, Isabella. My name is Marina. I've come here to be with you, if you'd like my company, of course. What are you drawing?" Isabella looked at her notebook, then back at Marina, and for the first time in months offered a shy smile. She slowly approached, holding up a drawing of a house surrounded by colorful flowers, and showed it to the new nanny. "It's Mummy's house in heaven. She lives there now with the angels." Marina's heart ached, but she showed neither pity nor exaggerated sadness, only genuine warmth. She held Isabella's small hand and said softly, It must be a very beautiful house. Your mother was lucky to have a daughter who draws so well." The connection was immediate, intense, and inexplicable. Within minutes, Isabella was already sharing secrets about her favorite toys, about how she missed her mother before bed, about the nightmares that visited her every night. Marina listened with full attention, without interrupting, without judging, without promising magical solutions she couldn't deliver. And when bedtime arrived, for the first time since Lucy had passed, Isabella fell asleep peacefully, holding Marina's hand, breathing softly and regularly. In the following days, the mansion's routine seemed to flow with a deceptive normality. Marina woke early, prepared Isabella's breakfast, accompanied the girl to the neighborhood's private school, picked her up in the late afternoon, helped with homework, played in the spacious garden surrounded by high walls, and at night read stories until sleep overcame the little one. But unlike previous nannies who avoided circulating alone through the mansion's long corridors, especially on the upper floor where the family's bedrooms were, Marina walked through all spaces with a naturalness that drew attention. She observed doors, windows, curtains, the positioning of security cameras installed at strategic points, the dark corners where someone might hide, the escape routes in case of emergency. To the staff, this was merely the quirk of an overly meticulous person. To Marina, it was survival instinct, something she had been trained to do for years. In a previous life, she was trying to leave behind. At night, when everyone slept and the mansion plunged into heavy silence, Marina silently walked the corridors, checking locks, testing windows, memorizing every creak of the noble wooden floor, every shadow cast by the external streetlights. Her room, a simple suite on the ground floor near Isabella's room, had become her observation post. She slept little, always on alert, always ready to react. Mrs. Martha was the first to comment on the new nanny's strange behavior. During breakfast in the kitchen, while Joanna prepared fresh bread and Mr. Oswald read the newspaper, the housekeeper whispered suspiciously, "That woman walks like she's always ready for something. Have you noticed? Her steps make no sound. She never turns her back to the door. And yesterday I saw her looking at the living room's alarm system as if she were memorizing the codes." Joanna shrugged, focused on kneading the dough. Mr. Oswald, however, looked up from his newspaper and frowned. He was a 60-year-old man, discreet, loyal to the Albright family for decades, and possessed a keen instinct for people. She might just be careful. After everything that happened, it doesn't hurt to have someone vigilant in the house. But the one who truly began to suspect Marina was Bernard, the estate's head of security. A former military police officer, prematurely retired after a murky episode in his career, Bernard commanded a small team responsible for camera monitoring, night patrols, and access control. He was a corpulent man with tattooed arms and a permanently suspicious gaze. He first observed Marina as she crossed the garden with Isabella, and something about her triggered all his internal alarms. Her upright posture, her shoulders always aligned, the way her eyes scanned the perimeter before allowing the girl to play, her overly quick reflexes when Isabella stumbled, and Marina caught her in mid-air before the fall even began. That wasn't nanny behavior. That was the behavior of someone with tactical training. "This woman isn't just a childminder," Bernard murmured to his assistant Fabian as they watched the security camera footage. "Look at the way she moves. Look at how she positions her body between the girl and any entry point. That's advanced security protocol." Fabian, a young and inexperienced man, laughed nervously. "I think you're exaggerating, boss. She's just careful." Bernard didn't reply, but continued observing. And the more he watched, the more his suspicion grew. Weeks passed, and the routine seemed to stabilize. Roderick remained distant, engrossed in meetings and travels, rarely home for dinner. When he crossed paths with Marina in the corridors, they exchanged polite greetings and nothing more. But he noticed Isabella's transformation. The girl was more smiling, more communicative, less haunted by the ghosts of loss. And this, in a way, both bothered and relieved Roderick. It bothered him because a stranger had managed to reach his daughter in a way he, the father, could not. It relieved him because, for the first time in months, Isabella seemed to be healing. One morning during a rare family breakfast, Isabella was chattering animatedly about an outing she had taken with Marina to the local park, when Roderick interrupted, looking directly at the nanny. "Do you have prior experience with children who have gone through difficult situations?" Marina took a sip of coffee before answering, maintaining a neutral expression. "I have experience with difficult situations, Mr. Albright, and with people who need someone they can trust." The answer was vague, but loaded with something Roderick couldn't decipher. He wanted to ask more, but Isabella started talking again, and the moment passed. Marina, however, had been noticing signs that no one else in the house seemed to perceive. Small details that, to trained eyes like hers, were alarm bells, some broken branches near the back wall at a point where there was no strong wind, tools in the shed that were slightly displaced from their original position, one of the external security cameras with its angle subtly altered as if someone had touched it, and even more disturbing, tire marks on the grass near the side gate, recent marks that did not belong to any of the house's vehicles. Someone was observing the property. Someone was circling the grounds. Someone was waiting for the right moment to act, and Marina had no doubt about it. On a Thursday night, as the rain began to fall heavily over London and the wind shook the garden trees, Marina was in Isabella's room reading another chapter of an adventure book when she noticed a strange movement outside the window. They were silhouettes, two tall figures, standing behind the trees that lined the side of the property, hidden in the shadows. They didn't move much, just observed. Marina continued reading as if nothing had happened, but every muscle in her body was on high alert. She finished the story, said goodnight to Isabella, turned off the light and calmly left the room. But as soon as she closed the door, she quickly walked to her own suite, retrieved a small pair of binoculars she kept in a locked drawer, and returned to the corridor window overlooking the side garden. The figures were still there. They weren't homeless people, nor neighborhood security guards. They were men strategically positioned, observing the house professionally. Marina memorized every detail she could see through the rain: approximate height, dark clothing, military posture. The way one of them held something that looked like a two-way radio. She didn't warn anyone. Not yet. First, she needed to understand the pattern, to confirm if it was continuous surveillance or just a one-off reconnaissance. In the following days, she silently intensified her own vigil. She slept less, listened more, mentally noted the exact timing of each employee's footsteps, Roderick's comings and goings, the moments when the house was most vulnerable. Isabella, with the sensitivity of children who have suffered profound losses, began to notice that Marina was tense. One afternoon, while they were playing with dolls, in the living room, the girl asked innocently, "Marina, are you scared of something?" Marina smiled and hugged the little one tenderly. "I'm not scared, darling. I'm just being careful, because you're very important to me." Isabella nestled into her lap, and Marina felt the enormous weight of the responsibility she carried. Protecting that child wasn't just a job. It was a personal mission, a way to redeem past mistakes that still haunted her nightmares. Roderick, who had passed by the living room at that moment returning from an external meeting, inadvertently stopped at the door and observed the scene. He saw his daughter nestled in Marina's lap, saw the protective expression on the nanny's face, and something stirred within his hardened chest. How long had it been since Isabella felt so secure? How long had he himself not allowed himself to feel anything but pain and anger? He continued walking without saying a word, but the image remained etched in his mind. That same night, as the rain began to fall heavily again, Marina made a full round of the house. She checked all doors, all windows, tested every lock. In Roderick's office, located on the second floor, she noticed something strange. The window leading to the external balcony had its latch slightly dislodged, as if someone had recently forced it. Her instinct screamed. She approached, examined it carefully, and confirmed her suspicions. There were subtle scratches on the metal, tool marks. Someone had tried to open that window, and recently. Marina took a deep breath. The threat was no longer just a distant possibility. It was real, imminent, and dangerous. She needed to act, but intelligently. She couldn't simply warn Roderick without concrete proof, and she couldn't blindly trust the security team, especially Bernard, whose murky history she had discreetly investigated through old contacts. She returned to her room, locked the door, and for the first time in months, opened a small metal box she kept hidden at the back of her wardrobe. Inside were some mementos from her previous life: a military medal she had never worn, a faded badge from a special unit, and photographs from a time she preferred to forget. Among them, a photo of a smiling child, approximately Isabella's age, whom Marina had failed to save years ago. That memory still burned like a live ember in her chest. "This time it will be different," she whispered to herself, closing the box. "This time I will protect." But what Marina didn't know was that the true storm was only just beginning, and that the threats were coming from directions she couldn't yet perceive. As she prepared for the worst, dark forces were already moving in the shadows, awaiting the perfect moment to transform that house into an emotional and psychological battlefield. And all of this was connected to a secret Roderick had been hiding since Lucy's passing, a secret so dangerous that it jeopardized not only his fortune and reputation, but the life of the person he loved most in the world, his daughter Isabella. The night wore on. The rain showed no signs of stopping, and Marina remained awake, observing the shadows through the window, prepared to do whatever was necessary, no matter the cost. Morning dawned with a timid sun trying to break through the heavy clouds that still covered London. Marina woke early, as always, but this time with an unsettling certainty settling in her chest. Time was running out. During breakfast, while preparing pancakes for Isabella, she carefully observed each employee circulating through the kitchen. Joanna hummed softly as she washed dishes, Mr. Oswald organized the morning's mail, and Mrs. Martha supervised everything with her usual austere manner. All seemed innocent, trapped in their predictable routines. But Marina had learned long ago that the greatest threats often hide behind the most convincing masks. Roderick came down for breakfast, wearing an impeccable grey suit, his cell phone already glued to his ear, discussing numbers and deadlines with someone on the other end of the line. He barely looked at Isabella, who was trying to get his attention by showing him a new drawing she had made the night before. Marina observed the scene with a pang in her heart. That man was so consumed by grief and work that he was missing precious moments with his daughter, the only moments that truly mattered. When Roderick finally hung up the phone and reached for a cup of black coffee, Marina gathered her courage and said with respectful firmness, "Mr. Albright, I need to speak with you about some security matters concerning the house. When you have a moment, it's important." Roderick stared at her with that closed-off expression that had become his trademark. "Security? We have an entire team paid for. That. If you have a complaint, speak to Bernard." "It's not a complaint, it's an observation, and I prefer to speak directly with you." Something in her tone, firm but not disrespectful, made Roderick hesitate. He was about to refuse, to simply walk out the door as he always did, but Marina's determined gaze stopped him. He sighed impatiently. "I have 15 minutes before my next meeting. Meet me in the office in 5 minutes." He left the kitchen without waiting for a reply, and Isabella immediately asked worriedly, "Marina, is Daddy angry with you?" Marina stroked the girl's blonde hair and offered a reassuring smile. "No, he's not, darling. I just need to talk to him about grown-up things. Finish your pancakes while I'm gone, all right?" 5 minutes later, Marina knocked on Roderick's office door and entered. The room was imposing, with mahogany bookshelves filled with architecture and management books, a massive desk covered with blueprints and contracts, and large windows overlooking the internal garden. Roderick stood with his back to her, looking out the window with his hands in his pockets. "Speak quickly, I have little time." Marina closed the door behind her and went straight to the point. "I've noticed suspicious activity around the property in recent days. People observing the house at strategic times, marks of attempted forced entry on the balcony window of this office, alterations to the security cameras. Someone is watching this house and they're not just curious onlookers." Roderick slowly turned with an expression that mixed disbelief and irritation. "And since when does a nanny have the expertise to assess security threats? You're seeing things, probably frightened by living in a large house. Bernard has handled this for years and has never reported anything like it." Marina remained calm, though she felt frustration building. "I know what I saw, Mr. Albright, And if Bernard isn't seeing it, perhaps it's because he doesn't want to see it. Or worse, perhaps he already knows and isn't telling you. The insinuation hung in the air like a heavy accusation. Roderick took 2 steps towards her, his face grim. "Are you accusing my head of security of negligence? Based on what, exactly? Your nanny's intuition?" The words were loaded with sarcasm, but Marina didn't back down. She met his gaze with firmness. "Based on years of experience in situations you've probably never had to face. I'm not asking you to blindly trust me. I'm asking you to pay attention. Isabella is in this house, and if something happens, regretting it afterward won't help." His daughter's name being mentioned in that way made Roderick visibly flinch. He opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by urgent knocks on the door. Bernard entered without waiting for permission, with a tense expression. "Mr. Albright, we need to talk, now." Roderick shot an irritated glance at Marina, as if she were to blame for the interruption. "You may go, Marina. We'll continue this conversation later." She left in silence but stayed just outside the door, close enough to hear fragments of the tense conversation that had begun. Bernard's voice sounded altered, nervous. "We received an anonymous alert on the emergency line. Someone called saying your family is in danger, that there's a real and imminent threat. The call was traced, but it came from a disposable phone." Roderick replied something in a low voice that Marina couldn't distinguish, and Bernard continued. "The thing is, it's not the first time. In the last 15 days we've had 3 attempts to breach the alarm system, all blocked. But someone with technical knowledge is trying to disable our defenses." Marina leaned against the corridor wall, processing the information. Her suspicions were being confirmed, but there was something else going on, something Bernard knew and wasn't fully disclosing. She moved away before the door opened and returned to the kitchen where Isabella awaited her anxiously. The day proceeded with palpable tension. Roderick cancelled his external meetings and remained home, locked in his office making call after call. Bernard reinforced the security team, bringing in 2 extra men for daytime patrols, but Marina realized that this was insufficient. The danger she sensed was not the kind that ordinary guards could contain. In the afternoon, while Isabella had her piano lesson in the music room, Marina took the opportunity to do what she had been avoiding. She called an old colleague from her time serving in the Special Forces. Colonel Ernest Meadows was a trustworthy man who knew her past and respected the reasons that made her abandon everything. "Ernest, I need a discreet favor," Marina said as soon as he answered. The colonel's grave and experienced voice replied with surprise and concern. "Marina Fuentes, it's been over 3 years since I heard from..." "How? I thought you'd vanished off the map for good. What's going on?" "I'm working as a nanny for a family in London. The Albright family, the businessman Roderick Albright. I need you to investigate if there are any registered threats against him or the family. Suspicious movements, debts with dangerous people, enemies who might seek revenge, anything that could justify surveillance and attempted invasions." There was a significant pause on the other end. "Marina, if you're involved in this, the situation must be serious. I'll see what I can find. Give me 48 hours. "We don't have that much time, Ernest. I need information in 24 hours at most." He sighed heavily. "I'll do what I can. But be careful, Marina. You're no longer an active soldier. If this blows up, you'll be alone." "I know. I always have been." She hung up the phone and closed her eyes for an instant, taking a deep breath. Unwanted memories resurfaced. The failed mission 5 years ago, when she was a sergeant in a tactical rescue unit. They had been sent to extract hostages from an extremely dangerous situation, and she had led the team with precision. But something had gone terribly wrong. Misinformation, a leak that was never clarified, and when they arrived on site, the operation was already compromised. There was a confrontation. Difficult decisions were made, and in the end, not all hostages were saved. Among those who didn't survive was a 6-year-old child named Laura, whose face still visited Marina every night in recurring nightmares. That failure had destroyed her career and her soul. She had been accused of incompetence, removed from the unit, investigated for months. In the end, she was officially acquitted, but the guilt remained, heavy as a stone in her chest. She requested a discharge, distanced herself from all her colleagues, moved cities and started a new, simple, anonymous life, caring for children. It was her way of trying to repair the irreparable. And now, Isabella represented a second chance, an opportunity to do things differently, to truly protect an innocent life. When night fell, Marina put Isabella to sleep as always, reading a story about brave princesses who faced dragons without fear. The girl fell asleep peacefully, hugging her favorite teddy bear. And Marina sat there on the edge of the bed, watching that serene little face illuminated by the bedside lamp. She felt a wave of protective love so strong it almost hurt. She would not allow anything to happen to that child. Never. She left the room in silence and went on her usual night round. The corridors were plunged in gloom, only the emergency lights emitting a faint glow. She checked doors, windows, locks. Everything seemed in order, but her instinct kept screaming that something was wrong. When she passed Roderick's office, she saw a light on under the door. She hesitated, but knocked softly. "Come in," his tired voice said. Roderick sat behind his desk, his tie loosened, and hair slightly disheveled, surrounded by papers and open folders. He looked exhausted, as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. He looked at Marina with a different expression, less hostile, more human. "Can't you sleep either?" She entered slowly and closed the door. "I'm used to sleeping little. I came to check if everything was all right." Roderick ran a hand over his face and let out a long sigh. "Nothing is all right, Marina. Since Lucy passed, nothing has been all right. And now these threats, these anonymous calls, this feeling that I'm putting my daughter in danger. Just by existing." It was the first time he had opened up in that way, and Marina felt the vulnerability behind the armor. She sat in one of the chairs facing the desk. "Do you have any idea who might be behind this? Any business adversaries? Anyone who might have motives to harm you?" Roderick hesitated, as if weighing how much he could reveal. "I have enemies, of course. No one builds an empire without making some people unhappy along the way, but nothing that would justify this intensity, unless it's related to something Lucy discovered before she passed." The air became charged with meaning. Marina leaned slightly forward. "Discovered what?" Roderick stared at her for a long moment, evaluating if he could trust her. Finally, he sighed and decided to speak. "Lucy was an architect. She worked on some of my projects. Months before she passed, she began investigating irregularities in one of our construction projects, a large housing development in the East End. She suspected someone was diverting resources, using low-quality materials, putting lives at risk. She gathered evidence, documents, photos, all organized in a folder she hid here in this office. When she was gone, the folder disappeared. I thought it might have been lost during the confusion of those terrible days, but now I'm almost certain someone stole it." Marina absorbed every word, mentally assembling the puzzle. "And you believe these people, whoever they are, think you still have that evidence or can reconstruct it?" "Exactly. And they won't stop until they're certain there's nothing left that can incriminate them. Lucy died in a supposed car accident, but I always suspected it wasn't an accident. I never managed to prove anything. The investigation filed the case as a fatality, but deep in my heart, I know. They took her from me." His voice trembled with contained pain and repressed anger. Marina felt a deep connection to that suffering. Both carried heavy guilt. Both had lost loved ones. Both were trying to survive the shadows of the past. "If this is true," Marina said with firmness, "then Isabella is in real danger. She is your only family, the only weak point they can use against you. We need a plan, Mr. Albright, and we need it now." Roderick looked at her with a new intensity, as if he was finally seeing who she truly was beneath the facade of an ordinary nanny. "Who are you really, Marina? Because you're not just a childminder, that much is clear." Marina could have deflected, maintained her disguise, but she decided it was time to establish trust. "I was a sergeant in a special army unit for 8 years, specialized in high-risk rescues and protection of sensitive targets. I left the service 3 years ago for personal reasons, but my training doesn't disappear, Mr. Albright, and now that training could be the difference between your daughter being safe or not." The silence that followed was dense, charged with revelations and decisions being made. Finally, Roderick nodded slowly. If you're truly willing to help, I need someone I can trust completely. Bernard is competent, but he has limitations, and I don't know how far I can trust him, considering the threats seem to be coming from within my own business." Marina agreed. "Then we need to act quickly and silently, without notifying the security team for now. Just the two of us, working to find out who is behind this and neutralize the threat before it's too late." Roderick extended his hand across the table. "Deal. You have my trust, Marina. Protect my daughter, and do whatever is necessary." She shook his hand firmly, sealing an alliance that would change everything. But neither of them imagined that the true storm was about to break much more violently and treacherously than anyone could anticipate. Because while they talked in that office, in the dark corners of the city, dangerous people were already moving their pieces, preparing the final blow against the Albright family. And among those people was someone Marina never imagined she would have to face again. Someone from her own military past, someone who blamed her for the destruction of his career and his life, someone who had sworn revenge and had now finally found the perfect opportunity to execute it. Colonel Ernest Meadows' call came exactly 23 hours after Marina's request, at a strategically chosen time, 3 in the morning, when the house slept and no one could overhear. Marina answered on the first ring, already fully awake and alert. "Marina, what you're doing there is dangerous," Ernest began without mincing words. "I investigated as you asked, and what I found is not good at all. Roderick Albright is secretly being investigated by a federal agency on suspicion of involvement in corruption schemes and embezzlement of public funds. His construction company won several government contracts in recent years, and there are indications of bribery, overbilling, and the use of inadequate materials that put lives at risk. He may not know everything, but his name is in the middle of an operation that could explode at any moment." Marina absorbed the information with professional coldness, but felt a tightening in her chest. "And his wife, Lucy. Did you find anything?" "I did. Lucy was a talented architect and, by all accounts, extremely ethical. In the months before she passed, she was gathering evidence against some minority partners in the construction company, including a certain Maurice Turner, the director of operations. The evidence she collected could not only destroy Turner's career, but put him in prison for decades. The official report of Lucy's accident is full of inconsistencies, witnesses who changed testimonies, forensics that were rushed, an investigation that was closed too quickly. I can't prove it, but everything points to sabotage." Marina closed her eyes, feeling rage boil within her. "And this Maurice Turner, where is he now?" "Officially, he stepped down from the construction company 6 months ago, citing health issues. But unofficially, he's working to cover his tracks, eliminating evidence, buying silences, and by all indications, planning something against Roderick and his daughter. Marina, this man has dangerous connections, unlimited resources, and zero moral scruples. If you're in the middle of this, you're in mortal danger." She took a deep breath, processing everything. "Ernest, I need one more thing. I need you to tell me if there's anyone from my military past involved in this story." There was a long, uncomfortable pause. "Why are you asking that?" "Because my instinct is telling me this operation has the hallmarks of military planning. The stakeouts, the attempted invasions, the way they're moving around the property. It's not amateur work. It's professional execution, the kind only someone with tactical training would do." Ernest sighed heavily. "There's only one name that could connect you to this, Marina, and you know who it is, Colonel Marcus Faraday." The name dropped like a bomb, making Marina's heart race. Marcus Faraday, her former superior, the man who had commanded the disastrous operation 5 years ago, the operation that resulted in the loss of little Laura and several other casualties. Marcus had been removed from command, investigated, publicly humiliated, and his career destroyed. And he had always blamed Marina for everything, accusing her of disobeying orders and making rash decisions that led to the failure. Marina knew that wasn't true, but she had never been able to fully prove her innocence, and the shadow of doubt had remained over them both. "Is Marcus alive?" Marina asked, her voice tense. "He is, and worse. He disappeared from official radar about 2 years ago. There are rumors he's working as a freelance mercenary, offering his services to the highest bidder. Intimidation operations, elimination of specific targets, complex sabotages. If he was hired by Maurice Turner to go after Roderick and Isabella, you're facing someone who knows all your moves, your weaknesses, your way of thinking, someone who has a personal vendetta against you. Marina leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of that revelation. Marcus Faraday, the ghost of her past resurfacing at the most critical moment. This wasn't just a protection mission. It was an inevitable confrontation with demons she had tried to bury. Thank you, Ernest. You've given me the information I needed. Marina, get out of there while you still can. This isn't your fight. She looked out her bedroom window towards Isabella's room upstairs. Yes, it is my fight. It always has been. She hung up before he could argue. The day dawned cloudy again, and Marina went down for breakfast with a plan already mentally laid out. She urgently needed to talk to Roderick about Maurice Turner, but she also needed to discreetly investigate the security team, especially Bernard. If Marcus Faraday was involved, it meant there was infiltration within the house, someone passing information outside, someone facilitating the enemy's access. Isabella was animated that morning, chattering about a ballet performance she would have at school at the end of the week. Marina smiled and participated in the conversation with affection, but her mind was on high alert, evaluating every sound, every movement around her. Roderick appeared later, looking even more tired. They spoke quickly in the pantry, away from the curious ears of the staff, and Marina reported everything she had discovered about Maurice Turner and the suspicions involving Marcus Faraday. Roderick was visibly shaken. Maurice was my partner for 10 years. I trusted him completely. Lucy tried to warn me, but I didn't want to believe her. I thought she was exaggerating, being too much of a perfectionist, and now I discover he might have been responsible for her passing. I feel like destroying this man with my own hands. Marina held his arm firmly. We cannot act on emotion, Mr. Albright. We need strategy. If Maurice hired Marcus Faraday, then we are facing highly trained professionals. Any wrong move could put Isabella in even greater danger. Roderick took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. What do you suggest? First, we need a safe place for Isabella, a place where she can be protected while we deal with this situation. Second, we need to identify who inside this house is passing information outside. And third, we need a plan to lure Marcus and Maurice into a trap where we can neutralize them for good. Roderick looked at her with increasing admiration and respect. You really know what you're doing, don't you? I was a fool to doubt you. Marina offered a discreet smile. The important thing now is to protect your daughter. Everything else comes after. That afternoon, while Isabella was having her English lesson with the private tutor in the study room, Marina decided to conduct a discreet search of Bernard's room, located in a separate wing of the mansion designated for staff living on the property. She waited for the moment he was occupied with the external patrol, and using her infiltration skills, opened the locked door without leaving a trace. The room was simple, organized, but while rummaging through a drawer in the wardrobe, Marina found something disturbing, an extra cell phone hidden under folded clothes, with messages exchanged with an unidentified number. The messages were cryptic, but clearly coordinated times and movements. She quickly photographed everything with her own phone and left the room unseen. The confirmation was clear. Bernard was the informant. He was relaying details about the house's routine, about Roderick's schedule, about when Isabella was most vulnerable. Marina felt a mix of anger and disappointment. That man had been hired to protect the family, but he was betraying that trust for money or cowardice. She needed to tell Roderick immediately, but she couldn't do it inside the house, where Bernard or other accomplices might overhear. She waited until late afternoon when Roderick returned from a quick meeting at the construction company's office and asked to speak with him in the garden, away from the cameras and microphones she now suspected existed at strategic points in the mansion. Bernard is the traitor, she said bluntly, showing him the photos of the messages. He's passing information to whoever is planning the attack. We can't confront him directly yet because we don't know how many other people are involved. We need to use this to our advantage. Roderick clenched his fists tightly, visibly furious. How could someone who worked for me for so long do this? How could he put my daughter at risk? Money, fear, blackmail, the motives don't matter now. What matters is that we know who he is, and we can use him to send false information to set a trap. We'll make Bernard believe you're leaving the city tomorrow for a 3-day business trip, taking Isabella with you. He'll pass that information on, and the enemies will try to intercept you on the way. But in reality, no one will leave. We'll stay here, waiting for them. Roderick looked at Marina with a mix of admiration and concern. What if something goes wrong? What if we can't contain the attack? Marina held his hand firmly. I won't let anything happen to Isabella. That I promise. But I need you to trust me completely. Without questioning, without hesitation. Can I count on you? He nodded slowly, his eyes moist. You can. You're the only person I truly trust now. The plan was put into action that same night. During dinner, Roderick casually mentioned in front of all the staff that he would need to travel to Edinburgh the next morning to resolve urgent issues related to government contracts, and that he would take Isabella with him so she wouldn't be alone. Bernard was present serving wine, and Marina discreetly observed how his eyes gleamed upon hearing the information. She knew that in a few hours that news would reach the ears of Maurice Turner and Marcus Faraday. Isabella was confused by the sudden announcement, but Marina talked to her afterward, gently explaining that it was just a security plan, that in reality they wouldn't be traveling, but they needed everyone to believe it. The girl, intelligent for her age, understood that something serious was happening and agreed to cooperate. Marina, are you scared? Isabella asked as she got ready for bed. I'm cautious, darling, but I'm not scared because I know I'm going to protect you. And your father is here too, taking care of everything. We're a team now. Isabella hugged Marina tightly. You won't leave after all this is over, will you? I like you very much. You're like the mother I lost. Marina's heart swelled with emotion. I won't leave, darling, I promise. Now sleep and dream beautiful dreams. As Isabella fell asleep, Marina sat there on the edge of the bed, watching that serene little face, and felt a fierce determination take hold of her entire being. No matter what Marcus Faraday brought against her, no matter how many men Maurice Turner hired, she would protect that child with her own life if necessary. Because this time the story would be different. This time, she would not fail. The night advanced silently. Roderick remained in his office, reviewing documents and maintaining the appearance that he was truly preparing to travel. Marina made her usual rounds, checking doors and windows, but this time with an additional purpose. She was placing small, improvised sensors at strategic points, using simple materials she found in the house, to detect any unusual movement during the early hours. Around 2 in the morning, when the house was plunged into absolute silence, Marina noticed something, a shadow moving near the back wall. It wasn't just one person. There were 3 figures dressed in black, moving with perfect military coordination. Her heart pounded. They were conducting a final reconnaissance, preparing for the attack they believed would happen the next morning, when Roderick and Isabella would supposedly leave the mansion. Marina didn't move. She just observed, memorizing every detail, every movement pattern. And then she saw something that made her blood run cold. One of the figures turned slightly, and even in the darkness, she recognized the posture, the way of walking. It was Marcus Faraday, there was no doubt. After 5 years, he was there on the other side of the wall, planning his revenge. She silently went down to Roderick's office and tapped lightly on the door. He opened it immediately, looking tense. They're here, doing final reconnaissance. Tomorrow morning will be the time of the attack. We need to be ready. Roderick nodded, his face pale but determined. What do we do? We stick to the plan, but with one modification. I'll make Bernard believe you've changed your mind, that you're traveling alone and leaving Isabella here under my protection. That way they'll divide their forces and we'll have a tactical advantage. I'll stay here with Isabella. You'll hide upstairs as backup. And when they invade, we'll be waiting. What if something goes wrong? Marina looked directly into his eyes. It won't go wrong. Because I won't allow it. Roderick, Trust me. I've done this my entire life. I know exactly what I'm doing." He held her hands tightly. "Marina, thank you for everything. For taking care of my daughter, for making me see that there are still good people in this world, for giving me the strength to fight when I was ready to give up." She smiled faintly. "Your daughter has given me more than you imagine, Mr. Albright. She's given me a purpose again, a reason to wake up every day. Now go get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." But neither of them slept that night. Marina remained on constant alert, checking the improvised sensors, mentally rehearsing every possible invasion scenario, every necessary tactical response. And Roderick stayed in his office, holding an old photo of Lucy, whispering silent promises that he would get justice for her, that he would protect the daughter they both loved above all else. Meanwhile, on the other side of the wall, Marcus Faraday observed the mansion with military night vision binoculars, a cruel smile on his lips. He would finally have his revenge against Marina Fuentes. He would finally make her pay for destroying his career and reputation. And if he needed to use an innocent child as bait to get to her, he wouldn't hesitate. After all, 5 years ago, Marina hadn't hesitated to sacrifice little Laura. At least that's what he believed. That's what he repeated to himself every night, to justify the hatred that consumed him. Dawn was approaching, and with it, the final confrontation that would define the destiny of everyone involved in that web of revenge, betrayal, and redemption. Morning arrived with a sky laden with dark clouds that promised a storm. Marina woke Isabella early, helped her dress in comfortable clothes, and explained once again with patience and affection that they needed to be very quiet that day, that it was like playing hide-and-seek, but for real. The girl, sensing the seriousness in Marina's tone, simply nodded with wide eyes and held the nanny's hand tightly. Roderick came down for breakfast with a small suitcase in hand, playing his role perfectly. In front of Bernard and the other staff, he announced that he had changed his mind overnight, that he thought it best for Isabella to stay at home with Marina while he dealt with urgent matters in Edinburgh alone. He would depart in an hour, taking the 10 o'clock flight. Bernard immediately offered to drive him to the airport, but Roderick refused, saying he preferred to go with his private chauffeur. Marina observed every micro-expression on Bernard's face. She saw the calculating gleam in his eyes, the way he disguised a satisfied smile, the way he immediately pulled out his cell phone and moved away to make a discreet call. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Bernard believed Roderick would be vulnerable on the way to the airport, and that Isabella would remain in the mansion with only Marina as protection. It was the perfect opportunity for a coordinated attack. What Bernard didn't know was that Roderick wouldn't be leaving the property. The private chauffeur was actually a trusted agent whom Colonel Ernest had sent as reinforcement, and he would merely drive the car out. The main gate, take a few turns around the neighborhood to simulate a departure, and discreetly return through the service entrance, where Roderick would alight and re-enter the mansion unseen by the main cameras Bernard controlled. An hour later, everything was executed perfectly. The car departed with Roderick seemingly inside. Bernard monitored the exit via cameras and made a few more urgent calls. Marina, meanwhile, took Isabella to a safe room in the mansion's basement, a space few knew about. Originally built as a wine cellar but now serving as an improvised bunker, she settled the girl with books, snacks, water, and a tablet with cartoons to keep her distracted and calm. "Isabella, you're going to stay very quiet here, all right? No matter what you hear upstairs, don't leave until I or your father come to get you. Understood?" The girl was scared, but trusted Marina completely. "I understood. Will you be okay, Marina? Promise you'll be okay." Marina knelt in front of her and held her little face in both hands. "I promise, darling. I'll be okay, and very soon we'll all be together again, eating chocolate treats and watching your favorite cartoons. Now be brave like the princesses in the stories we read. Can you do that for me?" Isabella nodded with determination, and Marina locked the reinforced basement door from the outside, placing the key in a safe spot. She went back up to the ground floor, where Roderick was already hidden in a secret passage behind a bookshelf in the library, armed with a personal defense baton, as neither of them wanted to involve firearms in a situation where a child was present in the house, even if protected. Marina made a final check of all access points. Windows locked, doors reinforced, improvised sensors in place. Mrs. Martha, Mr. Oswald and Joanna had been given a surprise day off that Roderick had invented, claiming it was a gift for their dedicated work. Only Bernard remained, along with his 2 security assistants, Fabian and Richard. Marina knew that at least Bernard was a confirmed accomplice, but she wasn't sure about the other 2. She needed to be prepared for any scenario. Around 11 in the morning, the sensors began to detect movement at the back of the property. Marina was strategically positioned in the living room, with a view of multiple access points when she heard the characteristic sound of someone forcing the service door lock. Her training kicked in automatically. Controlled breathing, muscles relaxed but ready, mind focused and calculating. 3 figures entered through the kitchen, moving with military precision. Marina recognized Marcus Faraday leading, followed by 2 men who clearly had similar training. They didn't expect to encounter significant resistance, relying on the element of surprise and numerical superiority. But Marina had spent years preparing for moments like these, and the house was now her territory, where every room, every corridor, every shadow worked in her favor. She allowed them to enter completely, to disperse, slightly, and then acted. She emerged silently behind the first man, applying a immobilization technique she had learned years ago, using his own weight against himself and causing him to pass out without an audible alarm. The second man turned upon noticing the movement, but Marina was already in motion, using a chair as both shield and weapon, striking him with calculated force in the legs, making him fall. Marcus Faraday reacted with the speed of someone who had never lost his training. He advanced against Marina with precise blows, but she dodged each one, counter-attacking with fluid movements that resembled a deadly dance. They rolled across the living room, knocking over furniture, breaking decorative vases, but Marina always maintained divided attention, half focused on Marcus, half ensuring none of them approached the staircase leading to the upper floor and eventually to the basement where Isabella was hidden. "You've gotten old, Marina," Marcus hissed angrily, trying to strike her with a baton he drew from his belt. "You've gone soft, lost your instinct." Marina dodged the blow and used his own force to unbalance him. "I haven't lost anything, Marcus. I've just learned to choose my battles better. And you, still blaming others for your own failures." The mention of the past made his eyes blaze with hatred. "It was you who destroyed everything. You disobeyed my orders that day. You made decisions you shouldn't have. And when everything fell apart, they left me to take the blame alone. My career, my reputation, my entire life destroyed because of you." Marina felt the sting of those accusations, but she couldn't afford to falter now. As they fought, she tried to make him understand. "I followed protocol, Marcus. The information we received was wrong from the start. Someone betrayed us that day, and it wasn't me. I tried to save that child with everything I had, but it was too late, and I've carried that guilt every day since. But I won't let you use that as an excuse to hurt an innocent child now." Meanwhile, on the second floor, Bernard had realized something was wrong when he heard the sounds of struggle coming from the ground floor. He ran upstairs to check, but was intercepted by Roderick, who emerged from the secret passage and confronted him directly. "You!" Roderick shouted with contained rage. "You betrayed my trust, put my daughter in danger for dirty money." Bernard tried to invent an excuse, but Roderick wasn't interested in listening. He lunged, and the 2 engaged in a physical confrontation. Bernard was stronger, but Roderick fought with the desperate strength of a father protecting his daughter. They rolled down the corridor, crashing against walls, and eventually Roderick managed to push Bernard down the stairs, where he fell heavily, hitting his head and falling unconscious. On the ground floor, the fight between Marina and Marcus reached its climax. Both were exhausted, wounded, bleeding from superficial cuts, but neither gave way. Marcus finally drew a weapon, but Marina was faster, kicking it from his hand before he could aim. The weapon slid across the floor, and both raced to reach it simultaneously. Marina got there first, picked up the weapon, but instead of pointing it at Marcus, she threw it out the open window. "I won't resolve this with you this way, Marcus. I won't become what you want me to be." Marcus stood still, panting, looking at her with a mix of anger and confusion. "Why? Why don't you just end it?" Marina stood up, pained but firm. because you need to hear the truth, and I need you to finally understand. That day, 5 years ago, when everything went wrong, it wasn't your fault and it wasn't my fault. We were betrayed by someone within our own unit, someone who sold information to the other side. I discovered this years later, when it was already too late to clear our names, but the truth is, we were both victims, Marcus. And instead of uniting to find the real culprit, we destroyed each other. Marcus faltered, his armor of hatred beginning to crack. Who betrayed us? Before Marina could answer, a voice emerged from behind her, coming from the main entrance. Maurice Turner entered with 2 private security guards, both armed, a glacial expression on his face. I think I can answer that question. It was Captain Ronald Sawyer, a former intelligence officer from your unit. I hired him 5 years ago to sabotage that operation because one of the hostages you were trying to save had compromising information about my businesses. He sold you both out, caused the tragedy, and you've carried the blame ever since. Ironic, isn't it? Marina and Marcus stood paralyzed, processing that devastating revelation. Maurice continued with a cruel smile. And now the 2 of you will pay together for Roderick Albright's mistake in not giving me the evidence Lucy gathered against me. Where is the girl? Marina positioned herself defensively. You'll never get near her. You can take me, but you won't touch Isabella. Maurice gestured for his guards to advance, but at that moment, Roderick appeared at the top of the stairs, his cell phone raised. Everything recorded, Maurice. Every word you said, your full confession, transmitted live to Colonel Ernest Meadows, who is currently on his way with a federal team. It's over. You've lost. Morris's face contorted with rage and panic. Guards, get that child now. Turn this entire house upside down. But before they could move, Marcus Faraday did something unexpected. He turned against Morris's guards, using all his combat skill to disarm them quickly. Marina, surprised, seized the moment to personally immobilize Morris, applying containment techniques that prevented any movement. Marcus looked at Marina, his eyes finally free of the veil of hatred he had carried for years. I spent 5 years hating the wrong person, 5 years wasted wanting revenge against someone who was also a victim. I'm sorry, Marina, for everything. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry too, Marcus, for the years we lost, for the friendship we could have maintained. But it's not too late for us to start fixing this. Sirens began to wail outside. The federal team had arrived, led by Colonel Ernest Meadows himself, who stormed the property with armed agents, arresting Maurice Turner, his security guards, and Bernard, who was beginning to regain consciousness. Marcus Faraday surrendered voluntarily, asking to testify and cooperate with the investigation, seeking a chance at redemption for the crimes he had committed under the influence of false information. When everything calmed down, Marina rushed to the basement and opened the reinforced door. Isabella was there, frightened but unharmed, and when she saw Marina, she ran into her arms, crying. Marina, you're hurt. You're bleeding. Just scratches, darling. I'm fine. It's over. It's all over now. Roderick descended the basement stairs with tears streaming down his face, hugged both of them tightly, and for the first time in months allowed himself to feel true relief. Thank you, Marina. You saved my daughter. You saved our family. In the weeks that followed, the truth fully came to light. Maurice Turner was indicted for multiple crimes, including corruption, embezzlement, sabotage, and involvement in Lucy's death. The evidence Lucy had gathered years ago was reconstructed through digital backups she had kept in the cloud, ensuring that justice was finally served. Bernard confessed everything in exchange for a reduced sentence, revealing the entire network of complicity that existed. Marcus Faraday gave a full testimony about Captain Ronald Sawyer, who was located living under a false identity in another country, and eventually extradited to answer for military treason and sabotage. Marina and Marcus were officially exonerated from the events of 5 years ago, their records cleared, their reputations restored. Marcus began a long process of rehabilitation and search for redemption, visiting the families of the victims of that failed operation and asking for forgiveness. Marina was invited to resume her military career with honors, but gently declined. Her life now had another purpose, another mission. Roderick offered her a permanent position in the family, not just as a nanny, but as an integral part of their lives. And for the first time in years, Marina accepted to build roots, to allow herself to have a true home. Isabella grew up happy, surrounded by love, security, and care. She would never forget her biological mother, but in Marina she had gained a second mother, someone who protected her with courage and loved her with all her heart. And Roderick, slowly, began to heal the deep wounds of loss, learning to live again, to smile again, to be a present and loving father. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, 6 months after that terrible day, the three were in the mansion's garden, now renovated and free from the shadows of the past. Isabella played with a colourful kite, while Marina and Roderick watched from a wooden bench. "You know, my daughter asked me when we're going to make you an official part of the family," Roderick commented with a discreet smile. Marina looked at him surprised. "Officialize how?" He held her hand tenderly. "I don't know exactly yet, but I know I can no longer imagine our lives without you. Isabella can't, and neither can I. You brought light back into this house, Marina. You brought hope when I thought there was nothing left to hope for." She felt her heart warm. "You two also gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. A reason to wake up every day with joy, a family to call my own, a chance to be truly happy." Isabella ran to them laughing, her kite dancing in the blue sky above. "Marina, Daddy, look! I made it fly so high." The two stood up and ran closer to her, the three embracing, looking at the sky where the colourful kite flew free and light, carried by the gentle wind. It was an image of hope, of a new beginning, of a family that had been broken but was now rebuilding with love, trust, and courage. Marina looked at Isabella and whispered softly, "This time I managed to save. This time everything worked out." And for the first time since that terrible day 5 years ago, she allowed herself to believe that she deserved that happiness, that she deserved that forgiveness, that she deserved a second chance to live fully. The sun shone brightly over London. The dark clouds had completely dissipated, and in the Kensington mansion, a new story was just beginning. A story of love, protection, and family, built on the rubble of pain but raised with the strength of hope. Isabella let go of the kite string, letting it fly even higher, and shouted with joy, "Let's have a picnic here in the garden. Marina, you make your delicious pancakes and Daddy brings the orange juice." Roderick laughed, a sound Marina hadn't heard in the first few months, and agreed animatedly. "Great idea, Princess. We'll have the best picnic ever." Marina observed that scene, etching every detail into her heart. The girl laughing, the father smiling, the blooming garden, the clear blue sky. It was everything she had always dreamed of but never dared to believe she could have. And now it was there, real, palpable, hers. As they prepared the picnic together, with Isabella giving funny orders about where each item should go, Marina felt a deep peace settling in her soul. The scars of the past would always be there, but they no longer hurt as they once did. They were just marks of a difficult journey that had made her stronger, wiser, more capable of loving and protecting. Roderick approached her while Isabella ran to fetch more cushions from the house and said softly, "Thank you for not giving up on us, for fighting when I was ready to surrender, for showing my daughter that there are still real heroes in this world." Marina smiled and held his hand. "Heroes are just ordinary people who choose not to run when things get tough, and you two gave me reasons to stay, to fight, to believe, so the thanks are mutual." Isabella ran back with arms full of colourful cushions, laughing, and the three spent the rest of the afternoon there in the garden, eating, talking, playing, creating happy memories that would heal old wounds and build a luminous future. And as night gently fell over London with stars beginning to dot the darkening sky, Isabella fell asleep in Marina's lap, while Roderick watched the two with infinite tenderness. It was an unconventional family, formed by the most improbable circumstances, but it was theirs. It was real. It was true love. Marina looked at the stars and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Gratitude for having survived, for having had the courage to try again, for having found those two souls who needed her as much as she needed them. The journey had been long, painful, and full of seemingly insurmountable obstacles. But in the end, everything made sense. Every scar, every nightmare, every moment of despair, all had prepared her for this exact moment, for this family, for this love. And as she carried the sleeping Isabella into the house, followed by Roderick, who turned off the garden lights, Marina knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found her place in the world. Not as a soldier, not as a nanny, but as someone loved, needed, and an essential part of a family she had chosen to build together, day after day, with patience, dedication, and much love. The mansion was now a home. And Marina Fuentes, the woman who had arrived months ago carrying only a backpack and a painful past, now had roots, had a future, had reasons to smile every morning. This time, she had managed to save. And in doing so, she had saved herself, too. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Marina, Roderick, and Isabella has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of redemption, courage, and love, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment resonated with you the most. Was it Marina's strength in protecting Isabella? Was it Roderick's transformation in learning to love again? Or was it little Isabella's innocence and courage? Every day we bring you intense and emotional stories like this, which reveal the deepest and truest side of the human soul, which speak of second chances, of forgiveness, and of the transformative power of love. Your presence here means a lot to us, and we want to continue bringing you narratives that inspire, move, and make you reflect on what truly matters in life. We await you in the next episode, where another touching story is specially prepared for you. Thank you very much for being with us on this emotional journey.